I might be way behind Bill Self, but it's time to start thinking about next basketball season. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in. Happy March 27th to you. Welcome into another episode of Locked On Baylor. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We are looking ahead eventually towards that women's basketball Sweet 16. We now know Baylor's opponent. It will be the USC Trojans, the 1 seed in the West. That's going to be up in Portland. We're also going to talk about a perfect target for the men's basketball team to kind of go off what I was talking about yesterday, getting away from the one and dones a little bit, even though you are bringing in at least one or two next year, and how to rebuild this team and retool it towards next year and looking at a veteran status. And also taking a look at some football headlines. There is a secret weapon for Baylor that is coming back into the fold that I cannot wait to see how he does and how he gets back instituted in there. And his teammates are excited about it too. And looking at the recruiting trail in football, there is someone who is back on the market. That is a Baylor target. We'll talk about that as well. Starting with basketball targets. The transfer portal is open. Guys have been going in there since the end of the regular season. It has caused teams to decline NIT bids because they didn't know how many of their guys were going to go into the portal, or some teams looking ahead towards building the portal for next season. And just about a week ago now, one of the biggest names announced that he is going into the portal, and we heard just about yesterday that Baylor has reached out. They have reached out to Cliff Omoruyi. He is a center from Rutgers and would be coming in as a grad transfer, played all 4 years at Rutgers. And let me tell you, this guy could play for anybody. This guy could play for any team in the country. And I'm surprised that not every team in America has reached out to him to try and get his signature and try to get him on their team for next year. Okay, so he's a center at 6'11", 240, and he is every bit the rim protector that Baylor needs and that everybody wants. He's a guy who's not pulling it from outside. He scores 2/3 of his baskets right at the rim. Has the highest block rate in the Big Ten. Had the most blocks in the Big Ten. 93 blocks last year. The Big Ten has Zach Edey in it, and Cliff Omoruyi led the Big Ten in blocks. He was also one of the top guys in offensive rebounding rate, which is something that Baylor kind of dipped away from towards the end of the season. And we've seen over the years that Baylor's been truly elite. That has been why. When you look at the Elite Eight runs and the Sweet 16 teams, and of course the national championship team that Scott Drew has had, they have been excellent offensive rebounding teams each time. Bang, you add one of the best in the country right there in Cliff Omoruyi, potentially. And this is what I thought was interesting. He's in the 85th percentile in pick and roll scoring. That's kind of the name of the game for athletic big guys, specifically centers, not just in the college game, but in the NBA. That's how you play in the NBA, is the pick and roll. You got to be able to play it. You got to be able to defend it. And I look at Cliff Omoruyi, and I see bits of Jonathan Chachua. I see bits of Yves Missi. I see bits of Mark Vital. I see bits of Rico Gathers, all put into this guy. He is big, and he is strong, and he is freakishly athletic. Like, you watch the highlights, this kid is an incredible athlete. That's the Yves Missi and the Jonathan Chachua I see in him. Okay, both those guys could jump through the gym. They were the best athletes on the court, but they were also really smart in that they utilized that in pick and roll and lob situations. So I see a lot of that in Cliff Omoruyi. But one thing I had talked about since literally the post game after the loss against Clemson was Baylor needs some grit, right? They need a shutdown defensive guy. And Yves Missi was a great shot blocker and a good defender. Josh Ojamuna, at times, a very good defender. At times. He dealt with some inconsistency in that department, but a versatile defender, Josh O. Cliff Omoruyi has all the things you want defensively in a center. I talked about leading the Big Ten with blocks. He has led the Big Ten in defensive rating the last 2 seasons. He has a dynasty going on Big Ten defensive rating. He also led the Big Ten in defensive box plus minus. And for those of you who don't know, that is if you're taken off the court, how much more is the other team going to score? His is negative. You need him on the court if you want to keep teams from scoring. He led the conference in that. He just has Baylor written all over him. All over him. He's got Scott Drew written all over him. And one thing that should not be undersold here is he has an amazing story. He comes to the U.S. from Nigeria at age 14. He doesn't know anybody. He's sent here for a better education, better life, and yes, through some great basketball skills and talent and athleticism. And he sticks around in New Jersey. He stays there for college, stays at Rutgers, plays all 4 years, and really sees a rise in this Rutgers program. I know they're not a tournament team, but they were dreadful a few years ago. And now they're on the precipice of being a tournament team, and they're bringing in some of the top recruits in the country. Cliff Omoruyi is a big part of that foundation. And it can also not be undersold how well Baylor does with international players, specifically at the center position. And I know that's a big leap for someone who has only been to lived in New Jersey in the U.S. to come down to Texas. But hey, your other center on the team, he is not only also an international player, he's from your home country. He's from Nigeria. You know, Jonathan Chanwa-Chachua and Yves Misi from Cameroon. Flo Thamba from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So many international players have come through here. Joe Lual-Acuil is another one off the top of my head. Manu LeConte at guard, a European, right? Miro Little from Finland. All these guys have thrived here at Baylor, whether it's coming straight out of high school, whether it's, you know, coming from some academy or coming in the transfer portal. These guys have all done so well at Baylor, and it's such a Scott Drew emphasis. And every year it seems we have someone that is a terrific international player, and especially at the center position. All of those names I just gave you, half of them were international guys. Joe Lual-Acuil, or excuse me, centers. Joe Lual-Acuil, Yves Misi, Jonathan Chanwa-Chachua, Flo Thamba, they're all centers. And so you see a blueprint here of guys who have gone on to great success, international guys playing center at Baylor. And there are some who hadn't had any time in the U.S., but almost all of them had very little time in the U.S. before coming to Waco. So there is a track record there. So in terms of reaching your goals, both in the college game and getting to the pros, Baylor can get you there. And in terms of Baylor's goals of what they need to fix and adjust for next year's team, not the least of which being experience, he's a fit there. Cliff Omoruyi, Baylor, marriage, perfect, happily ever after. Give me Cliff Omoruyi. I will be doing cartwheels if Baylor gets Cliff Omoruyi. To me, and we will be looking at some of the other transfer portal targets later on in this week and throughout this offseason, obviously. This is the most perfect fit I've seen so far. So I am like all the way in on this, like no doubt. But I want to talk to you about one of today's sponsors. And look, you and I both love to bet. And I love doing it by myself, but the only thing that makes it more fun is doing it with your friends. Okay, that is what we're talking about. That is the fun, the synergy from working together with something like Bettor Together. It also gives you a better chance to win. So it's like all your daily fantasy sports games, but it's with your friends and with other people. So two brains being put onto it, or maybe you and your friends like me add up to one brain. That gives you a better chance at winning than just having your brain on it. It's a way to stay connected with your friends. You don't have to, sit down there at the sports bar. You can keep connected with them by going through Bettor Together. So it gives you a sense of community, working together, all that fun stuff. So all the daily fantasy sports fun that you can have, plus getting your friends involved. Okay. So For my friends here in Texas, download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using the promo code Locked On for a free $5 entry into any NCAA basketball contest. Okay, that's the code Locked On, LOCKEDON, because winning alone, sure, that's fun. That's fun and all, but honestly, it's better together. Today's episode is also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Look, you are looking to catch up with all your favorite sports. You're looking for a way to watch the NCAA tournament. You're looking for a way to watch me here at Locked On Baylor and all of our friends in the Locked On Podcast Network. Amazon Fire TV is your destination for that. Okay, whether you're doing it with your smart TVs and have all the multi-view, or you're like me and you've got the Amazon Fire Stick and you can plug it into any TV in the world, basically, and get all these free and fun content, okay? They also recently created Fire TV channels that give a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that includes us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. So, we got March Madness going on right now, both the men's and the women's. We've got baseball coming up, Rangers and Red Sox this week in Arlington. So it's coming in there fast. The way to keep up with all of it is through our Fire TV channels and Fire TV and your Alexa device. You get that plus millions of movies, TV shows, anything you watch on TV, you can get there. So if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you need to, okay? Trust me on this. To learn more, just visit amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. We are also into football season, aren't we? Yes, spring football season. And with that comes a new era here at Baylor and hopefully a more prosperous one than they went through last year. Now, I say a new era. Obviously, you still have Dave Aranda at the helm, right? But now it's a different look. He is taking a more hands-on approach. He is now like the full-on defensive coordinator and not just doing the ultimate game plan. Like, he is out there calling the plays. Matt Powledge is still there, but it's Dave Aranda calling the shots on this one. And we've already had, through 1 week of spring football, the first day actually, like double bad news. That was 2 nose tackles, as Jarrell Boykins and Trey Emery are out forever. They've had to, unfortunately, medically retire. And so that puts Baylor in a bind. That was not a position they were great at last year since Siaki Ika left. The defensive line in general wasn't terrific. It was fine. But then you lose Gabe Hall and TJ Franklin. And now you're down 2 nose tackles. And it's been, kind of baptism by fire, I guess, for Anoke Brechterfield, who comes in and just doesn't have the bodies to work with. But one body he will have to work with, a guy who's coming back, is Jackie Marshall. And he will mainly line up on the defensive end, so it doesn't necessarily fill your nose tackle problem. But Jackie Marshall was a guy who was majorly on the ascent at the end of 2022 when he was a freshman, actually. And just before the spring game last year, he gets a big injury and he's out for the season. Tore his ACL, out for the season. And that was a big miss for Baylor. You saw it the last couple of games in 2022, what he was able to do. And he talked about kind of that road to recovery, and his teammates there, in this case, Trey Wilson, talking about how exciting it is to see Jackie Marshall back here in the fold.
I was having a really great spring last year around that time. When I got hurt, it was hard at first, but just realizing like it was nothing I could really do about it, but attack the rehab, get better every day.
Man, I ain't never seen nobody do what he did. This man, he's been able to play. He's been able to play since fall camp, but he's done a good job transitioning back into it. Looks like he hasn't skipped a beat, so I love that for him. That's my guy. Go through hell and back together. So
sounds like he is stronger than ever, and I hope that is the case, because Marshall was a guy I was super excited about going into last season. Again, didn't really play until more the latter half of 2022, but he came on strong. I mean, 16 tackles, 8 of them solo, 16 solo tackles, 24 total, and deflected 3 passes on that defensive line, which I love. He also recovered a fumble too. So like instant impact when he was able to come in and actually play. And in fact, his first game was not until November 5th against OU. And that was, I believe, the 9th game of the season. And he comes in and kind of dominates the rest of the way. And so I was super excited about him. And then bang, a week before the spring game last year, he blows out his knee, and we're back to square one working without him. But that's obviously not his fault. It's awesome to see that he comes back. Now, it will be interesting to see what that does as a whole in the defensive line, because does it fix the defensive line problems that Baylor has? Probably not. You're still down 2 nose tackles. There's no way around that. And we see when an offensive line can key on a defensive end and give all their attention on one side, it does not lend itself to productive stat lines for defensive ends, right? They could be playing really well. They could be giving absolute fits to the offensive line. It could be opening up a lot on the other side, but you don't see it on the stat sheet. Jackie Marshall is going to have a lot on his plate this season with those 2 nose tackles out and being medically retired. So anyway, does it fix the defensive line problem? No, but it's still exciting to have him back. And what I think the bigger concern is about the defensive line is its deterioration, I think is the right way to phrase it, the last couple of years. 2021, of course, they were dominant. Baylor's defense as a whole was dominant. Both lines were terrific. And then in 2022, they just didn't make much of an impact. All the numbers went down, the rushing numbers and the sacks numbers and the hurries numbers. They all went down from 21 to 22, even with a lot of experience up there. You still had your Gabe Hall and your TJ Franklin. You also had Siaki Ika, who was projected to be a first-round pick before that 22 season. He ends up being a third-round pick. Still was effective, but not the same way he was in 2021. You added Jackson Player, the Waco native, who was just ripping up offensive lines when he was at Tulsa, and that didn't prove too prosperous either. And the offensive line dipped in 22 to where we get to 23, and neither of them are effective. It's just the trenches were lost big time. This was all quiet on the Western Front, man, just losing in the trenches. So I'm apprehensive. I am excited about Jackie Marshall coming back, but he's not a one-man show. And Anoke Brechterfield has his work cut out for him here. You can't pin it all on a first-year position coach when you've had the deck that he has to deal with. But it will be interesting to see how he is able to manage what is at this point going to be quite a makeshift defensive line. And it's one they will have to address in the transfer portal, which won't open up again until after spring practice. So you've got a ways, and I mentioned this in the show last week. It's not like who's going to be in the portal at that time. So you can't key in on it. It's just guys are going to put their names in, and you're going to have to do some quick homework, some quick research. But until then, you kind of got what you got. And with Baylor, it's great to have Jackie Marshall back, but there's not a lot that we have seen around him right now. We'll see if we're proven wrong there. All right, guys, you know what time it is. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. And you know that each week we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. And I'm talk about the Cougars. Houston Cougars can only be described as the Armada. This 1 seed is hardcore, man. We know it. We have seen it all year long. We saw it against Baylor in a game that the Bears really should have won. They were so close, and they had all these hurdles thrown at them, Houston, and they still win in overtime against A&M and go to the Sweet 16. I think this team can really win the whole thing. They're my pick to win the whole thing. Okay, so take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Houston Cougars Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. And you could do that by just going on to shopnissanusa.com. How about this as well? Passion, drive, patience. Okay. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to that peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. If you're like me and you have a car that you want to level up, you can do what I do. Go to eBay Motors, okay? And with their guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber. You're not burning cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that victory. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, and exclusions on that, of course, do apply. So looking at the world of, well, we just looked at the world of 2024 Baylor football, but where their momentum really is beyond 2024. Weirdly enough, don't know if the coach is going to make it through 2024, but your momentum in the last couple of weeks and months has skyrocketed for 2025 and beyond. And I'm talking about that recruiting trail. Shout out to Keenan Hall. He has been not the only one, but instrumental in some big names committing to and looking at Baylor. And he is now being teed up for potentially another big recruit to come in. Okay. We are talking about the receiver from Pflugerville Weiss, and you will know his name as Adrian Wilson. Okay. Wilson, big time pass catcher, and Baylor's been hot on his trail for a while. He's a 4-star guy by 247 and most of the major outlets. He was committed to TCU in the summer. Oh, dang, bummer. Well, but then he decommitted from TCU, and then he committed to Oregon. And just yesterday, he decommitted from Oregon. So his recruiting is open again as he heads into his senior season at Pflugerville Weiss. 6 foot, 170-pound, burner kind of guy with big numbers. I mean, absolute production. Last year, caught 60 passes, over 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns through the air. And that almost doubled all of it from the year before, which is the thing that I love the most. He was a big prospect still in 2022, but he had, I mean, literally almost doubled everything. 29 catches, 543 yards, 8 touchdowns. Up to 60, I'll read it again, 60 catches, 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns. 1140 in the 100, so fastest guy on the field. Not typically, but still pretty darn fast and can jump a 5'8", which is pretty good for a kid of his size. And he has great football lineage, I suppose. His cousin is Tyree Wilson, drafted 7th overall last year by the Raiders. So that's pretty good. And now, Keenan Hall, you got a chance to bring someone back on the Baylor train, because Baylor was actually the first school to offer Adrian Wilson all the way back in the summer of 2022. So he was not only just finished with his freshman season, but he hadn't even played a game for Pflugerville Weiss yet. He was still at Del Valle. So that's something I'm always intrigued by when it's a major school that offers you first. And no disrespect to these schools, but it's not UTEP or UNT that's offering him first. It's Baylor. Baylor, A&M, Houston, all in a row. And in fact, it was really only Baylor and A&M that did it before his sophomore season. So I just wonder with interest that early on, how that kind of sways these guys. So, does it mean anything? I don't know, but I'm intrigued by it, and I will be paying attention to how he treats a potential Baylor signing when they were his first offer all the way back in June of 2022. By the way, he does have a high school teammate who is on the team right now for the Bears. That's Micah Gifford, who is coming in to his sophomore season, also a receiver from Pflugerville Weiss. He was the one who was on Friday Night Tykes, if you're interested in that kind of thing, Micah Gifford. So look, it's something there. It's something there, potentially adding Adrian Wilson, a 4-star receiver on there. We'll see what that interest is like. And the reason I do bring it up before we head out of here is I want to see how these high school kids are reacting to a new Jake Spavital offense. We've already seen some guys make a flip and have mentioned something along those lines of Jake Spavital and the new offense, and of course, Keenan Hall. And we know that high school players are attracted to this. So let's see if the proof starts getting physical here. If we start getting more of these guys who are saying no to other programs, quite frankly, better programs than you right now, but look towards that future and look at the offense and the coaches in place in that. That's what I'm really interested in. Anyway, I'm also interested in the transfer portal. So let me know what you think about Cliff Omoruyi. Drop that down in the comments below and what you think about this Baylor football situation defensively, on the defensive line, what needs to change there. And if this new regime, because we haven't seen it out on the field yet, should be attractive for guys like Adrian Wilson and prospective high-level offensive guys. Drop that down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. And thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll be back tomorrow with your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.